This episode of Mental is brought to you by Spas and More. Visit spasandmorestl.com for more information.
Today I am joined by Mr. Adam McChesney. Adam, for those who may not know you, and we're going to go over some of your background here because I did some digging and known you for a little while too. But what is your primary role day to day? What do you do and who are you? Where are you from?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Corey. It's a pleasure, man.
Yes.
So from here in St. Louis, grew up in Oakville, South County, not too far away from here. CEO and founder of Builders of Authority. So main gig right now is really just leading the team and building our brand. So we have two different sides to our company. We have a mastermind where we kind of teach people personal branding and digital marketing. Then we have a done-for-you digital marketing agency, kind of where I got my start in the marketing world back in 2018. So we build websites, do SEO and stuff with the Google Business Profile, and then paid ads on Google and Facebook.
Okay. So paid ads on Google and Facebook is something that is far different nowadays than it used to be. Prior to 2018, and we'll come lead back up to this, but prior to 2018, you had a couple different roles as well, right? So you are a college graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then was medical device sales your first, like what I refer to as a big boy job? Was that your first?
So I had an internship in college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do after college. I had 4 degrees, and I thought, oh, hey, if I just go get all these different degrees, like somebody's going to hire me. And then I applied like everywhere, and everybody was like, you know, you got a lot of good experience, but it's kind of all over the place. Had 3 or 4 internships in college, but I also didn't know what I wanted to do.
Sure.
Took a full-time gig with that company, stayed with them for about 9 months, and learned sales. That's where I actually started to learn sales, and I didn't know I was getting into a sales job. But I just had no idea what I was doing. I was still living in Columbia, Missouri, where I graduated college from, so I stopped that, moved back, and really just messed around for about 6 months before I ended up getting my first big boy job in 2016.
Okay. So yeah, so from there, it was only 2 years and you went into this digital thing. What was the transitional shift? Was it finding a purpose? Was it finding a why? Did you discover this during medical sales?
So for the first 18 months of medical sales, I was working at a small company here in St. Louis. Really cut my teeth there in sales because I was actively not just like account managing, as I would call it, but I was upselling, cross-selling, doing all this stuff, and I was traveling all across the country.
Cold calling?
Cold calling, like knocking on doors on college campuses, selling chemicals and reagents for life science research was kind of our main thing. So like, you know, them trying to find, doing cancer research, doing all this other stuff, diabetes research. I'm a type 1 diabetic, so it was like really cool to see how they test out a lot of this stuff. So I did that. Was really successful, but there was a small company and there was kind of a cap on like what I was going to make. Like it was at like that time, I think the most I could have physically possibly made was like around $50K for the year, and that's where I landed. And so all of a sudden I started to say, okay, hey, the average life cycle of all of these employees that are here is usually 2 to 3 years because they end up getting recruited by another company. And so I wasn't getting actively recruited, but I saw a LinkedIn post for another company where I ended up going right after that, which is ResMed. And so I was stepping back a ton of responsibilities, traveling way less, all in the state of Missouri and Iowa, and selling a much cooler product, which in my opinion was like the CPAPs and the masks and all that stuff. Yeah. And they were like, yeah, first year here, you'll probably make about 90. And I was like,
cool, doubled.
Yeah. So I did that, and so I did that in July of 2017, and in April of 2018, they had an opening at the beginning of the year here in St. Louis, and they basically told me, hey, like, this is a new role inside of the company. You're going to do this role for 3 to 5 years, and if you do well and an opportunity presents itself, you can have the job. Not have the job, but like apply for it. But if you want to be in that role, you're probably going to have to move because people just didn't leave the company. Well, the guy here in St. Louis literally leaves 6 months in, and all of a sudden I started taking over his roles and responsibilities, and they allowed me to apply for the job, and I got it. And so I was 26, and so at that moment, my first full year there, I made $200,000.
Nice.
So I went from like 35 in 2016.
Right.
in 2018 and 2019.
It's like getting drafted.
Yeah, dude. It was like life is changing, right?
Yeah.
And so it was at the moment, 6 months after I got that job and that promotion, I proposed to Delaney. I was planning for the wedding, and all of a sudden, like, starting to think more about my future, right? Like, what was I going to do when we eventually had kids, and how could I, like, navigate life traveling and doing all this stuff still? And so I just said, like, I want to know what else is out there. So I typed into Google while I was traveling 1 week in Kansas City, and I just said how to make money online, and I got targeted by an ad that taught me digital marketing. I had to buy a course, but that was the whole evolution.
So you fell in love with it. Why?
Because I could work from wherever I want to, whenever I want to, with who I want to, and make as much or as little as I want to. It was like kind of up to me.
Yeah. So like the nomadic part was kind of an underlying thing, but the real issue, or seems like the big kicker for you, was you get in what you put in.
Yeah, and
right? Like a true non-capped.
Yeah, true non-capped, freedom and flexibility. And when I did it, I was just like, okay, maybe it's some side supplemental income. Like, I never thought in November of 2018 when I bought that course, I never thought in July of 2020 I would be going full time. I just didn't know that there would be a possibility. But then things started to escalate during the pandemic, where I basically was getting paid to stay home and take PTO and all of this other stuff. So I just started building and building and building. And I'm like, if there's ever a time for me to take a chance and just see what going full time with this was, because I was waking up at 4, work until 7 or 8, building websites. I'd come home and build more websites and do a bunch of research and all this stuff. And I was just like, this isn't sustainable. If I were building my own thing from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m., like, that's a different story. Yeah. But like, it's partly me building and mostly working for somebody else.
Yeah, no, I can fully relate to that. Like, when we started my first company, it was one of those things where working my day job, I had an hour lunch break that I would create my client base in, and then do that work in the evenings. And at one point, I was even doing another job in the mornings, kind of like that. So completely relate. Like, to get to where you want to be, especially when you're younger. I think individuals have a certain drive to where it's like, yeah, I'll do 4 things for now so that I can get to where I can do one thing.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
My grandfather had a really great saying about that, and I'm sure he didn't come up with this, but, and that was, if you do what you have to do when you have to do it, then someday you can do what you want to do when you want to do it. Have you heard that?
I've heard something along those lines, but very powerful.
Yeah. And so you was your first jump in 2018, 2019. What was your setback? Was there a setback? Was there a time of regression and then rebuilding?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, like, I bought the course November of 2018. My first website that I did went live a month later, and all of a sudden I'm sitting. And so how I got into it was digital real estate.
Okay.
So I basically would build a website. Think of any generic random thing. For some reason I picked appliance repair in St. Louis. I built a fake website that I owned and I operated, and the calls would come to me, and then I would go find an appliance repair company to do the work, and I basically would sell either the lead or kind of like a monthly tenant fee rent.
So you're brokering leads.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got started. And I love that because I had friends that had done the agency model that I do right now, and it's very cutthroat. So funny that I went from what's probably a smarter business model to where I'm doing that right now. But I was like, okay, hey, like, I need to make sure this works. Like, before I go, and for me, I looked at it as like, if I just have this hobby or this lesson like that I learned in an entrepreneurial spirit, let's go test it out. So I'm sitting in an Airbnb in December of 2018 at my mom's wedding. So she got married in an Airbnb to my stepdad, and so we're sitting there, and it's like a weekend, and all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up, and I'm like, who are these random numbers calling me? And so I started to pick it up, and they're like, hey, I'm in Kirkwood, my dishwasher's broken in my kitchen, can you get somebody out here? And I'm like, I just built this site and launched it. Like, how are people already finding it?
Yeah.
I hear these horror stories of people spending all this money on marketing and it never working. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow. So, like, I called this appliance repair company that I ended up working out with the people that I originally sent the leads to, but I was just like, hey, somebody's got to go do it. A couple weeks later, I ended up finding a guy to take over the calls out in St. Charles. Like, yeah, we cover a pretty large area. And he still pays me to this day for this lead. So it's almost 6 years, no, over 6 years later.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, this works. But then I kind of got the shiny object syndrome where I went and I said, okay, well, what else can I do? And how many websites can I build? And that also with the aspect of the job in 2019 started requiring more. Like, it was like, okay, hey, if you really want to go make that 200K, like, you're going to have to go grind it out. You're going to have to go do those things. So I started thinking like, hey, I just paid $7,000 for this course. I have some fees that I have to pay for domains and call tracking and all that stuff. But I was like, this guy's paying me right now. Like, it's kind of all covering itself. So I just didn't really have the motivation to do that. And then at the end of 2019, I wrote on a piece of paper, I said, hey, like, there was something in my gut that was just telling me, is like, you need to take this more seriously. Like, you need to invest time and energy and not just talk about it, but actually be about it. And so I took some more courses in 2019. I learned Facebook ads, learned Google ads. And then in 2020, like literally January 1, that's when I started really hitting it, like, and saying, hey, we're going to do something with it. And then I had about 2.5 months of runway before the pandemic hit, where it was like, hey, I already had the momentum going. I started to actually get some sales in versus like, I was just doing projects. Like, it really was a hobby. So I'm building all these sites. Like, I built 200 sites before I'd ever sold one, like actually got paid in advance for doing something. So I was just testing stuff out, and that was like my busy work. And I'm like, oh, but I'm doing research and I'm doing all that stuff. So it kind of taught me of like, hey, like, especially now as I've just started to dive deep in things, is like, you have to have a common mix. You can't just do research all the time, and you can't just go take action all the time. There's got to be, there's got to be a mix in the middle.
So shiny object syndrome you talked about. A lot of people never talk about that as entrepreneurs, or at least that I hear. Maybe they do. Maybe there's a whole, I'm sure there's a forum somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. But another relatable thing as an entrepreneur that I would definitely like to have your intake on, or input on, is, so like my experience in that was bigger and better, right? The kind of a grass is greener deal. It sounds like you're having a thing where you're like blowing up within the same space. What about the instance where getting ahead of yourself? Because when I look at the shiny object syndrome and I think about entrepreneurship, oftentimes, again, I'll speak from personal experience, there's this growth period or a win. You get a win and it's like, we celebrate the championship instead of thinking about the next game.
Yeah.
Or the same token as, okay, great, what else can I get? Rather than staying focused on the foundation and the basics. So how important was it for you to refocus on basics and complete a foundation before grabbing things? Because you had a kind of a hump, a rise and a fall within that period, right? Of the 2020, because of the pandemic plus others.
Well, so like I did, like those first sites that I built, one was that appliance repair site that's still on the first page of Google that's paying me.
Yeah.
The other one is an appliance repair site in Columbia, Missouri that's still on the first page of the Google. I found that guy in 2020. He's still paying me. The third one is the auto glass company that I literally launched, and we're the #1 rated auto glass company in St. Louis. The sites 4 through 10, they're still out there. They're kind of there, but I built almost another 150 plus sites that kind of just tinkered and did stuff. So I didn't really have processes and systems in place. So I started to try to like hire some things out and say, hey, you guys go build this. And I never really gave them direction. Like, I knew I had built those first 10 sites. I literally built from the ground up that appliance repair site, all the other sites that I just mentioned. And so it was like done to a T. And then I tried to say, well, like, how big can I get this? And I'm just going to go like pay somebody to do it and trust that they're going to do it right, because they know what they're doing. Is they know I knew something, which was like the attention to detail, taking more time and energy to do that. But I wanted to just like get big without doing it right. So I had to come back to the foundation when I went full time in 2020 and say, hey, like, is this other model with the digital real estate, is that suitable, and does that fit where I'm trying to go? Or do I need to open up a traditional digital marketing agency like we have today, where we start to get paid in advance, and we also have these other projects that we can go tinker with in the future? But I had to go back to the foundation and say, hey, it's probably best to do the tried and true thing and do it the right way versus bouncing around and assuming everything was going to get done the right way.
Well, and as a leader, do you find sometimes, you basically just described it really, really surface level at the beginning of what you said about hiring people out and expecting them to be able to do their job or know their job. I often run into scenarios where I'm describing or explaining something, and either A, because I've built it from the ground up like you have in the past, my expectation or my belief is that there's an understanding to whomever I'm speaking with that they have the same knowledge as me, and that's untrue. And it tends to frustrate me sometimes initially. It used to, I should say. I'm much more patient now with the understanding that you're not inside my brain, and you didn't go through these steps. And so there was that, and I've seen the same thing in coaches or leaders across the board with a certain level of frustration that there's not the same understanding that you may have been doing something for 10 years and you're asking an individual that's just getting into it to understand and comprehend. So then going back to the basics is not only an essential part, but also a way that I use to dumb it down for myself. Because when you learn a new CRM system, I'm sure doing what you've done, you've had to learn a lot of CRM systems, right, with various companies. I always think of it as it was like a fear factor when I was younger. Like they're like, oh, this is our CRM. And I would look at it like this matrix of maze online where I'm like, I'm never going to figure out how to navigate this. Typically 2-3 weeks in, I'm not eyes closed, but I'm very comfortable within that CRM. So after a few times of learning other companies' CRMs to help them do their marketing, I started understanding like, oh, I have a learning curve of 2 to 3 weeks. So then it becomes less formidable, right? Like less scary. Did you create systems in place based on pitfalls and a way to continue to state the basics? Because I feel like you're a very effective leader, and it's because from what I've heard you explain to others, you are very good at the ABCs, the basics. So where did that methodology come from? Trial and error?
Like really over the last probably year and a half, that has been more prevalent, I should say, than the first probably 3.5 years that I was doing this. So
sticking to the basics, you mean?
Yeah. So like the first 9 months when I went full time in July 2020, I was doing everything on my own. So I did have a couple people that I was like outsourcing stuff to, but for the most part, it was like Adam is doing everything. And then I was like, wow, like I just created a job for myself. And yes, I'm making like okay money, but like I was working way less in theory, doing way easier work in theory in medical device sales with a lot more like upward potential per se. So like I was like, why am I doing this? And so I got introduced to a digital marketing agency franchise in 2021 by a guy that I met in that course that I bought in 2018. And he was like, hey man, I just became part of a franchise. Like I saw you make a post about like you're struggling to do the sales and build all the websites and do all the account management and do all this stuff. He's like, I think this model would fix a lot of your problems. And so like, I'm a very quick guy. Like, you know, most of the people that end up, you know, that just buy franchises in general, like they take a very long time to digest like the decision. And so the decision for me, or the process starts.
You mean
like,
prior to buying in?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So the decision went from like middle or end of March to like I was wiring like $35,000 in April because like the pain was so bad, and I was like I can't do this anymore. Like I really want to be a CEO, and I really want to sell, and I really want to build this brand because I had really learned about personal branding in August of 2020, and so I did that. And in April of 2021, bought a franchise of a digital marketing agency. And so that took everything off of my plate other than sales and branding and account management.
Okay.
Like my specialty, right? So I went from like $30,000 a month in recurring revenue to $100K a month in recurring revenue in about 6 months.
Nice.
Once I only had to do what I was really, really good at, and I bought into the system that took care of the rest. Now, fast forward from all of those crazy things, the most we ever did was like $200,000 in a month. I built up a team of 10 people between here in St. Louis and Nicaragua while having a fulfillment company through the digital marketing franchise, where I had access to about 150 to 175 people at any given time. That ended up taking a little bit different of a turn. I became a partner there in June of 2023. So I basically like folded in my franchise, wrote a 6-figure check, became a partner, and thought like we were just going to take this thing to the moon. And it ended up being like everything other than what I thought it was going to be. And so I basically like raised my hand in February of 2024, so last year.
Was that because of when you got into it as a partner? Was it the fact that maybe you as a franchise owner were excelling, but the other franchise owners weren't at that same place?
Literally, right? Like we had, I think 26 or 27 franchisees at our peak.
Okay.
And I was the only one consistently above 100K a month. And it took me 6 months to do that.
So the expectation is from this level is, oh, well, if I'm doing this well, then all the other owners are. You get in and you're like, wait, this is all part-time for you guys.
And I knew that they all weren't
They're
doing
day traders.
That.
You're full-time.
I knew that they all weren't doing to that level, but I'm kind of the person that like, I thought for so long I was a fixer, right? So it's like, hey, there's this thing struggling over here. I'm going to come in and fix it. So like, I thought,
you could show them how to do it.
Show them how to do it, be more involved, go fix problems with fulfillment, go try to like, even though I wasn't the CEO in this partnership, like I was the VP of sales, but like I could lead by example and hopefully get enough buy-in to where I could go fix what I wanted to fix there. And it was everything other than that. It was like, go be a sales rep. And I had made that decision to do that because one, I didn't believe in myself to like be the CEO of a franchisee, as a franchisee, of a company doing, $200,000 a month in revenue. It was destroying me, and I was getting ready to have Murphy. And so I made the decision, probably again, didn't like the first one, we made it really quickly. It was like conversations happened in April or May. We signed everything on June 1st. So like stuff happened very quickly. And then I basically raised my hand in February of 2024 and said, hey, I need out. Now, when I did that, I thought it was going to be some sort of like amicable thing where it was like, hey, I just wrote you a 6-figure check. I own X percentage of the company.
Right.
Like pay me out. And they had done a lot of different stuff where there was just no money to be there. So the next thing I know, I'm in a lawsuit, basically for all of last year.
Nothing's liquid.
Nothing's liquid. Nothing's liquid. I have a non-compete. So I'm sitting there, a 6-month-old. I get dropped from medical benefits. I got fired because when I said, hey, I want out, they could fire me, and I didn't own a majority of the company. So it was like kind of this weird thing. So then had to go through all that. And we had the mastermind, luckily, that we built, which is where Builders of Authority comes in. We had that built, but it was not really, it was making, $15,000, $20,000 a month, but it was not, and I was doing some one-to-one coaching and consulting, but like I couldn't go do what for the last 3.5 years was making me money. Sure. So I had to basically sit on my hands from March until October, but I had the time to learn from all those mistakes, learn from the highs of the highs and the lowest of the lows of rational decision making. And when pain is there, going out on a whim and saying, oh my gosh, I'll pay to have this problem go away. So I had to do a lot of inner work last year, but I also had to develop myself into a leader that now, when we relaunched in October, we're sitting roughly around 150 or so a month right now, about 9 months in monthly recurring revenue with a team of 23 people.
Okay.
Most of them I've all worked with in the past, whether it was at an agency or another agency. And so they've seen my transition of just Adam, the guy that could brand himself well and could go sell, to more of a leader and more of somebody that is the CEO of a business that, as you mentioned, now is more focused on structure and processes and those things. While I may not be the best at doing those, I find the right people to do that. And I attract the right people and retain the right people and reward the right people to complement my weaknesses.
Yeah. I think humility is the greatest strength of a leader. Certainly my overall journey in this last year, Punchline's 1 year, July 23rd. will be 1 year of the LLC on that thing. And this has been my greatest, from 2024 until now, early spring of 24, I would say, till now has been the biggest growth period of my entire life. And most of that was through being brutally honest with myself about my shortcomings, my lack of certain things. Self-awareness was a huge one. Impulse control, acting on emotion. All these things were like hidden in this armor inside of me that from the outside, to some, probably a lot less than I think, to some probably appeared as confidence, but was really ego, protecting these weaknesses and protecting these things that I wasn't sure of. And so like shedding that off and then accepting those things and then allowing the universe to bring me people that complement those weaknesses has been the guiding light and the ability to like really just transition into what I would consider a true leader. Like, as you know, working with us here, it's like I appointed a CEO when I had, so somebody else was running my company basically on a day-to-day operational thing because this is not my strength. And it was a decision that I wouldn't have made 3 years ago.
And I think that is a perfect example of the growth of who you needed to become in order to be in the right place right now. Because there's so many different things where I'm like, man, I would have not hired these people even 2 years ago. I would have said, like, I'm going to make as much money as possible. Like, I had a call with our team yesterday, like our monthly call, and I was just going over. And I, you know, even down to like the person that we just hired last week to do content writing, which is like the entry level thing. Everybody's on that call, and I'm like, hey, here's what we did from revenue this year so far. Here's what we did last month. Here's how much profit we made. Here's why the profit was less, because we tripled our team, and I bought you all computers, and so like those are things that I always would have been scared to share with my team. But so many people have either seen me or been with me in this journey where they've seen who I've became in the process. And the more that you can lean into that, like you've leaned into it, it doesn't just impact you, it impacts everything around you. And that's what I always struggle. I'm like, no, like I'm just going to not just worry or be selfish about me, but I'm going to do it to where I can protect myself. I never wanted to be vulnerable. Like I never wanted to like get more hurt than I was on the inside.
Sure.
So I would bottle it all up and try to go fix it on my own. And it was like, no, when you can just lean into it and accept what it is on the surface level, the right things are going to come. But usually the right things that are going to come aren't the things you initially anticipate.
If you were to ask me like how everything came to fruition within this last year, and I'm sure you might have a similar thing, I could probably like sit down and really scope it out and bullet point out key points. But I honestly couldn't like tell you definitively like, oh, this happened because of this. Like it all seemed very serendipitous and very like non-linear. It was just like oh, this happenstance over here led to this and this growth here. All of this was built off the premise of I had enough of my own shit and I was tired of secular romantic relationship situations. I had been able to maintain other, friendships, business ships, whatever kind of things, but there was like this ting, and it was primarily the lack of true self-love, which really came from like not dealing with traumas and not dealing with all these other things, and so it seems strange to me now to even talk about it in that way, but as someone who's accepted that, I understand, as well as I think you do, the importance of being fully in alignment to be able to be successful in any one aspect of your life, whether it's fatherhood, leading a business, relationships, or otherwise. Like if you're not self-aware and healed and can identify those things and those weaknesses and have that humility, I don't believe that you can truly be successful at any one thing. And that part never stops either. I had gotten to a point in my journey where I was confident that I was ready to date. I can add this. So I think about like juggling. I had done a lot of healing, a lot of self-work to where, okay, cool, career's good, fatherhood's good. I feel good about myself. Cool. And then it's like throwing romance. And it's like, whoa. Right. And so then I had this situation where I had to reconfigure things and understand what that taught me was profoundly different than the past, in the sense that you're always going to get to a point where you feel like you're prepared for the next battle, and you probably are. But ultimately, you got to be prepared for a war. And so that never stops. I never know what's going to trigger me until it triggers me in any one thing. So being able to take calm and not react through emotional gut checks is huge in business and in relationships and in just everyday life. I know you alluded to it. But what about, like, you're building all this as you're a new father, newly married, fairly, right? Newly married as you're building this stuff. So you have a lot of new things in your life. Where were you finding adjustments to balance all that stuff?
So, I mean, the short answer is I wasn't for like the first 3.5 years, really, until like Murphy was born.
Yeah.
I kind of looked at it where, again, when I was looking and I told Delaney in May of 2020, like, hey, we had just bought our forever dream home. So like went from like a 900 square foot condo in Valley Park to, hey, we're going to go buy this, massive home. And it ended up working out. Like, we got a really good deal on it right before the housing market went crazy. So it was like meant to happen. But I said, hey, like, now that we got the house and we got the mortgage under wraps, I'm going to quit my job. And 6 weeks later, I did that. And then I look at it where I was like, hey, like, I'm going to go grind it out, hustle it out. And I had about a 3.5 year runway before Murphy was born, right at 3 years. And so I was doing all the different things. I was way more focused on business than I was, at home and all of those things. And I think there's a time and a place for those things. I think a lot of people look at, like, how can I balance all those things? And one of my old business coaches and life coaches said, hey, it's not about work-life balance. It's about work-life harmony. And that's really stuck with me over the last couple of years, where I was so frustrated in myself because I'm like, man, I built this business, for my family, but really for our future. But I'm not around as much as I would have liked. Like, I'm traveling just as much as I was in medical device sales. So last year was really kind of the first time, and really after Murphy was born, where I did travel some. But I took a massive step back to say, hey, like, I'm going to wear the at-home hat more now. Now, the problem is that it went from me putting all my eggs in this partnership to, like, being like, hey, babe, I know I just wrote this 6-figure check and I put my $2 million business on the line for this and all this stuff, but, like, we're probably going to lose it all. So I'm going to get out of it. And so then last year I had to go back into the rebuild mode. So it was kind of this, like, it felt very, like, it just felt shitty because
shattering.
Yeah, it was because it was like, okay, I had built everything for this particular, like, 2024, looking back on it, and now it's all crumbling to the ground. And on top of that, I'm going into a lawsuit, and I mean, it was just the most difficult, really, year outside of, like, January of 2024 of my life, because there were so many different things. And so when I rebuilt it, and when I said I was going to do it, I said, hey, I'm going to do everything differently from the ground up. Now, I have obviously put in a lot of time, energy, and effort, but I went from probably traveling, once or twice a month for 3 or 4 years. Just as an entrepreneur, not to mention the time in medical device sales, to this year, I've gone to one event, and we're sitting here in July. Now, the back half of the year, I do have some speaking gigs and some things like that where I will be traveling, but I've taken really the last 6 months to just be like, man, I need to work on me and my family and all those things. And, like, it required me to go hire the right people to do that. And that's expensive, right, when you do that.
Yeah.
The alternative
you pay for what you get, that's for sure.
Exactly. The alternative is I could go and try to grunt this out again and take more profit and take more money in myself and all those different things. But it was just like, man, I've caught myself, I guess, to kind of come full circle here, I've caught myself at many times across this journey of rebuilding where I 3 years ago made the wrong decision, and I almost made the wrong decision again, but I was like, Adam, you're doing it again. Like,
you had that self-awareness.
You have the self-awareness. You have to go do it differently.
Which gave you the authority to build what you have today.
Exactly.
Good one?
Yeah.
I like it. So what if you have, what I like to end with is, if you have a phrase, a mantra, something that gets you through your daily, that's resonated with you over the years. And while you think of that, I like to share always something that I'm taking away from this. Something that I'm taking away from our conversation today is a reimagining on the shiny object syndrome. I had never heard it called that, and that really resonated with me to hear that other people have that same degree, because for the time that I've known you, which is within this time period that you've rebuilt all these things, you're very well put together, except where, sometimes when a baby's born, you lose some sleep. And, and I can resonate with that. So I've seen you tired, but I've always seen you very structured and put together. And so, like, knowing that you have that shiny object syndrome and we're able to re-navigate resonates with me. And that was an important thing for me to hear from another entrepreneur, that is not something that's a unique to my...
Everyone struggles with it, whether they want to admit it or not.
yeah, for sure. So that's what I'm taking away. And what about you? What is a phrase or a mantra or saying that maybe you've repeated in your head several times, or even like a video? Like, one of the things that I've never referenced this yet, but I probably will on a solo show, is the video that I used to watch like 7 times a day was the Steve Harvey jump speech. Have you ever seen that?
I have not, no.
I'll send that to you when we're done. But what's yours?
So I actually, I end every single podcast episode with this, and it's what I have in my podcast intro, and it's something I don't even really know where it came from, but it kind of just stuck with me, is authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time. And I was talking with a guy that I've known for a couple of years earlier today, right before this episode, and he's going through a similar transition of what I went through. And for years, he never built a personal brand. Like, he built a business, and he's got to start all over again. And he was asking for advice and asking for all these things. And he's like, Adam, I've seen you start over and have this massive thing. And I said, I never stopped branding. I never stopped doing content. I never stopped going on podcast episodes. I never stopped doing my own. Like, I never stopped doing those things. And the big difference of the first 6 months, for example, when I got started, the first 9 months when I got started, is this growth is happening because of the experience. But the authority that I've built over time, when I had to start back over, as so many of us do in life and business, I wasn't starting over at zero, like a lot of people do have to do, whether it's because they worked for somebody else or they built their business, but maybe it went out of business, and they're having some sort of identity crisis. If you don't build authority yourself, you're going to struggle to get through that tough time. And if you do, if and when you have to start over, a lot of people have to start over from zero.
All over, yeah.
And so you can't just build authority one time. You can't do it for a couple months or a couple of years. It is truly not built overnight. It's built over time and time again.
Excellent. Consistency over time is the biggest life hack that you could ever really tap into, I think.
Yeah.
So, well said, my man. Appreciate it, Adam.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much. If you want to find out more about Adam or check out Builders of Authority, all of those links will be in the description bar. And thank you all for joining us and listening in today.
This episode of Mental is brought to you by Spas and More. Visit spasandmorestl.com for more information.